Hi guys! Today we're going to talk about the 10 worst air disasters in history. Number 10. Airframe Flight 7425, 200 fatalities. On July 10, 1985, Airframe Flight 7425 on a domestic Karschi-Ufa-Leningrad route crashed near Uchkodok, Uzbek, SSR Soviet Union on the first leg of its route. All passengers and crews were killed. An investigation concluded that the plane went down due to pilot error. The aircraft was cruising at an altitude of 38,100 with an airspeed of only 400 km per hour, close to stalling speed for that altitude. The low speed caused vibrations which the aircrew incorrectly assumed were engine surges. Using the thrust levers to reduce engine power to flight idle, the crew caused a further drop in airspeed to 290 km per hour. The aircraft stalled and entered a flat spin, crashing into the ground near Uchkodok. Flight 7425 had 139 adult passengers and 52 children and 9 crew members on board. Number 9. Metrojet Flight 9268, 224 fatalities. On October 31, 2015, an Airbus A321-231 Metrojet Flight 9268 crashed in the Sinai Peninsula after departing Sharm el-Sheikh International Airport, Egypt, en route to Pulkovo Airport, St. Petersburg, Russia. All 217 passengers and 7 crew members were killed. Most of the people aboard the flight were tourists. There were 212 Russians, 4 Ukrainians, and 1 Belarusian passenger. Investigators believe that a bomb was put on the aircraft at Sharm el-Sheikh with the goal of causing airlines to suspend flights to that airport. A branch of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant claimed responsibility for bringing down the jet, and a Russian investigation concluded that a bomb was detonated inside the plane at high altitude. Number 8. China Airlines Flight 611, 225 fatalities. On May 25, 2002, a Boeing 747-209B China Airlines Flight 611 bound for Hong Kong International Airport in Hong Kong disintegrated in mid-air and crashed into the Taiwan Strait 20 minutes after takeoff from Chiang Kai-shek International Airport in Taiwan. It was determined that the crash, which killed all 206 passengers and 19 crew members aboard the plane, was caused by improper repairs to the aircraft 22 years earlier when the aircraft encountered a tail strike. The final investigation report found that the accident was the result of fatigue cracking caused by inadequate maintenance after a much earlier tail strike incident. On February 7, 1980, while landing in Hong Kong, part of the plane's tail had scraped along the runway. Permanent repair was conducted by a team from China Airlines from May 23 through May 26, 1980. However, the permanent repair of the tail strike was not carried out in accordance with the Boeing Structural Repair Manual. Number 7. Air France Flight 447, 228 fatalities. On June 1, 2009, an Airbus A330-203 Air France Flight 447, carrying 216 passengers and 12 crew, was en route from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil to Paris, France, when it crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. The aircraft's flight recorders were not recovered from the ocean floor until May 2011, and the final investigative report was released in July 2012. France's Bureau of Inquiry and Analysis for Civil Aviation Safety final report released at a news conference on July 5, 2012 concluded that the aircraft crashed after the temporary inconsistencies between the airspeed measurements, likely due to the aircraft's pitot tubes being obstructed by ice crystals, caused the autopilot to disconnect, after which the crew reacted incorrectly and ultimately caused the aircraft to enter an aerodynamic stall from which it did not recover. Number 6. Korean Air Flight 801, 228 fatalities. On August 6, 1997, a Boeing 747-3B5 Korean Air Flight 801 crashed on approach to the international airport in the United States territory of Guam, killing 228 of the 254 people aboard. The National Transportation Safety Board cites poor communication between the flight crew as probable cause for the crash, along with the captain's poor decision-making on the non-precision approach. Contributing factors in the crash were fatigue and errors by the flight crew, inadequate flight crew training, and a modification of the airport's altitude warning system that prevented it from detecting aircraft below a minimum safe altitude. Number 5. TWA Flight 800, 230 fatalities. On July 17, 1996, a Boeing 747-131 TWA Flight 800 carrying 212 passengers and 18 crew exploded and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean near East Moriches, New York. Shortly after departing from John F. Kennedy International Airport on a flight to Paris and Rome. The 4-year NTSB investigation concluded with the approval of the aircraft accident report on August 23, 2000. The report's conclusion was that the probable cause of the accident was explosion of flammable fuel vapors in the center fuel tank. The likely ignition source was a short circuit. Problems with the aircraft's wiring were found, including evidence of arcing in the Fuel Quantity Indication System, or FQIS, wiring that enters the tank. As a result, new requirements were developed to prevent future fuel tank explosions in aircrafts. Number 4. Air India Flight 182, 329 fatalities. On June 23, 1985, Air India Flight 182, a Boeing 747-237B en route from Toronto and Montreal to London and Delhi, crashed off the southwest coast of Ireland when a bomb exploded in the cargo hold, killing all 329 people aboard, including 268 Canadian citizens, 27 British citizens, and 24 Indian citizens. One passenger had checked in as M. Singh. M. Singh did not board the flight. His suitcase containing the bomb was loaded onto the plane. However, Mr. Singh was never identified or captured. It was later determined Singh extremists were behind the bombing as a retaliation for the Indian government's attack on the Golden Temple in the city of Amritsar, which is very important for the Sikhs. This was at the time the deadliest terrorist attack involving an airplane. Number 3. JAL Flight 123, 520 fatalities. The crash of Japan Airlines Flight 123 on August 12, 1985 is the single aircraft disaster with the highest number of fatalities. 520 people died on board of a Boeing 747. The aircraft suffered an explosive decompression from an incorrectly repaired aft pressure bulkhead, which failed in mid-flight, destroying most of its vertical stabilizer and severing all of the hydraulic lines, making the 747 virtually uncontrollable. Pilots were able to keep the plane flying for 32 minutes after the mechanical failure before crashing into the mountain. All 15 crew members and 505 of the 509 passengers on board died. Japanese military personnel inaccurately assumed during a helicopter flyover of the impact site that there were no survivors. Rescue operations were delayed until the following morning. Medical providers involved in rescue and analysis operations determined that several passengers likely survived the impact and probably would have survived the incident had rescue operations not been delayed. Only 4 passengers survived the incident in its entirety. Number 2. Tenerife Disaster, 583 fatalities. The Tenerife airport disaster was a runway collision between 2 Boeing 747s on Sunday, March 27, 1977, at Los Rodeos Airport on the Spanish island of Tenerife, one of the Canary Islands. It remains the accident with the highest number of airliner passenger fatalities. 583 people died when a KLM Boeing 747 attempted to take off without flight clearance and collided with a taxiing Pan Am 747 at Los Rodeos Airport on the Canary Island of Tenerife, Spain. All 234 passengers and 14 crew of the KLM aircraft died, and only 61 of the 396 passengers and crew of the Pan Am aircraft survived. Pilot error was the primary cause as the KLM captain began his takeoff run without obtaining air traffic control clearance. The subsequent investigation by Spanish authorities concluded that the primary cause of the accident was the KLM's captain's decision to take off in the mistaken belief that a takeoff clearance from Air Traffic Control or ATC had been issued. But Dutch investigators placed a greater emphasis on a mutual misunderstanding in radio communications between KLM crew and ATC. Number 1. September 11 attacks, 2,996 fatalities. The deadliest aviation-related disaster of any kind was the destruction of the World Trade Center in New York City on September 11, 2001, often referred to as 9/11. On that morning, 4 commercial aircraft traveling on transcontinental flights from East Coast airports to California were hijacked after takeoff. The 4 hijacked aircraft were subsequently crashed in 4 separate suicide attacks against major American landmarks by 19 Islamic terrorists affiliated with Al-Qaeda. American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 were intentionally crashed into the north and south towers, respectively, of the World Trade Center, destroying both buildings in less than 2 hours. The World Trade Center's crashes killed 2,753, most of fatalities being occupants of the World Trade Center towers or emergency personnel responding to the disaster. In addition, 184 were killed by American Airlines Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon, causing severe damage and partial destruction to the building's west side. "40 passengers were also killed when United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into a Somerset County, Pennsylvania field after passengers fought back and prevented the hijackers from reaching their designated target. The attacks resulted in 2,976 fatalities and over 25,000 injuries. It is the deadliest terrorist attack in human history and the single deadliest incident for firefighters and law enforcement officers in the history of the United States, with 340 and 72 killed respectively. I hope that you enjoyed and learned a lot from this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video!